on that note, we'll go to another 2-year contract that was reported on over the weekend, over the last couple of days, except this time it wasn't an accepted contract, it was a declined contract. Victor Oladipo, who's a guard for the Houston Rockets, he was acquired in that gigantic blockbuster trade for James Harden a couple of weeks ago, almost over a month at this point. The reports are that Oladipo recently turned down a 2-year, $45.2 million maximum contract extension, the most that the Houston Rockets could offer him before the end of the regular season. Oladipo is currently averaging 18.9 points, 4.9 rebounds, and 4.8 assists in 13 games with the Rockets. That is a little bit higher in terms of points, but around average for what Oladipo is averaging for his career thus far in the NBA. You know, I wasn't sure how Oladipo would react to being moved to Houston at first, but it appears as though the connection has been pretty good thus far. The Rockets are in a bit of a tough situation, however. Christian Wood went down with an injury. He was by far their best player, apart from John Wall. DeMarcus Cousins got released, so the team is going through a little bit of a personnel dilemma right now, but I think when it comes to pieces that you have that you would want to consider keeping on, I think Oladipo is somebody that the Rockets should seriously consider keeping on the staff because he has proven to be the model of consistency when he's not injured, and that's a gigantic asterisk, when he is not injured. And so when it comes to what the Rockets would want to do with Oladipo, him turning down the contract isn't any indication that he just does not want to play in Houston. Oladipo has been searching for a long-term contract pretty much with whoever he's been with since the Orlando Magic moved him. So whether that's the Thunder or the Pacers or now the Rockets, he's been looking for that long-term fulfillment. He's looking for a place to call home. Now, it's not necessarily his fault, obviously. He's been traded a couple of times, but he really wants a place that he can call home. And, you know, Houston might be a team that could potentially be that home for Oladipo, and I would really like to see that relationship play out. Like I said, they're going through a little bit of a personnel dilemma right now. They're going to probably have an extremely bad end to 2020, but when it comes to next year, which is what I think really matters in terms for Houston at this point, because the moment that the Houston Rockets lost James Harden, this season was over. Actually, you know, I would even say that as soon as James Harden requested a trade, this season was over for the Houston Rockets, you know? So, you know, with that being said, I don't think this season necessarily matters at this point. You want to try and get some pieces for the next season where you can make a real run, hopefully in a world that isn't marred by health and safety protocols and the coronavirus and fanless basketball. But Oladipo has been a model of consistency in his time in the NBA. He's a really good wing defender, probably one of the better wing defenders in the NBA at this point. And I think the Rockets should absolutely try and do whatever they can to offer him that max contract extension this summer, or whenever the free agency is. Now, if they don't want to do that, and there's a very real possibility that they just say, hey, look, you're a fantastic player, but we need more than just you right now, I think a great landing spot would be the Miami Heat. Now, the Miami Heat and Victor Oladipo are a couple are two entities that have flirted with one another constantly over the past 2 years. And I mean, this is full-on flirtation, like, hey, I like you, you like me, but we just can't be together right now type of flirtation. I think it would behoove the Miami Heat to try and make a trade for Victor Oladipo. You know, and the argument against the Heat making a trade for Oladipo is the fact that the Heat are red hot right now, or maybe I should say white hot, considering it's the Miami Heat. But regardless of that, the Heat are an extremely hot basketball team right now. They are jiving well with everybody. But when it comes to the hole that they put themselves in, I would argue that adding a player like Oladipo that, you know, really adds a sure top defender and 19-a-point guy to your offense pretty much every single night. Tyler Hero has been struggling this season, more so than last. He's really hit a sophomore slump, and he's injured currently. I don't know if he's back in the lineup or not, but I remember him being out for a couple of games. So I think if you plug Oladipo into that offense, whether it be Nunn starting at point guard, or Dragic, so Dragic or Nunn with Oladipo, Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, And then you have Andre Iguodala or Kelly Olynyk. Kelly Olynyk might be a trade candidate if you were to trade Victor Oladipo for some pieces if you're Houston. But I like the Heat to be a recipient of the Victor Oladipo Services Awards, to put it that way, if the Rockets do end up moving on from Oladipo. But like I said, I like Oladipo in Houston. I think that in terms of what Houston would want to try and replace somebody like James Harden, is he as gifted on the offensive end? No, he's not. But he's extremely gifted athletically. He's a great defender, something that the Houston Rockets really haven't had in the longest time. And I think when it comes to building cornerstones of your franchise to try and get back into the playoffs next year, a backcourt tandem of John Wall and Victor Oladipo, you can certainly do a lot worse than that. So realistically speaking, if I'm the Houston Rockets, I'm going to try and sign Oladipo to a max extension this summer. Christian Wood is a rising young center, so then you just need to plug in the pieces. I think if anybody should be traded away from the Houston Rockets, it's PJ Tucker. He's kind of disgruntled. He's been waiting on a new contract, and he hasn't gotten one. Sure, PJ Tucker's defense is a huge asset to the Houston Rockets, but regardless of that, I think you could probably get two pieces or another equally as good piece that may gel better with your franchise. So I think if you're going to move one of the two players that are rumored to be traded or potentially on the trading block for Houston, you probably want to move away from PJ Tucker. And, give yourself and Victor Oladipo a chance to get to know each other a little bit. He's only played 13 games, and as I said, in those 13 games, he's averaged 19 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists, which is statistically on par for where he is in his career. So it's not like he's underperforming. He's doing exactly what is advertised. You need to keep the consistent players, and I know that the knock on Oladipo is that he's injured all the time or that he has injury history, but I think in terms of what the Houston Rockets can do at this point, this is probably the best that they can do, and David Fertitta needs to do everything that he can to keep Oladipo in there, because without, the attraction of Daryl Morey in Houston, without the attraction of playing with James Harden in Houston, you're going to need players that want to play for Houston, and you really need to try and cater to Oladipo at this point to keep him in Houston. But like I said, if the odds aren't in Houston's favor and the relationship isn't strong enough, and they want to try and get a couple of prospects for Oladipo to try and rebuild this basketball team, I think the Miami Heat will be a perfect candidate for Oladipo at this point. And that would be a great fit. They've been flirting with each other for a couple of years now, so it's going to be interesting to see how that develops over time. So really interesting to see what Houston will do with Oladipo. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching this segment from the Hard Headed Sports Podcast. You've heard what I've had to say, now I'm interested to hear what you think as well. If you enjoyed this highlight from the show and want to watch more highlights from the show as they come out after the show's completion, you should definitely subscribe to the YouTube channel, and if you're interested in listening to the entire show in its full-length entirety, you should follow the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Anchor. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you all very soon.